Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about why I think shoulder carry is not only still cool, but should make a serious comeback in 2025 and beyond. Some background on shoulder carry. It actually started in the 1800s. So the mid 1800s is the first time we see an example of a shoulder holster being used for a pistol. And this was used for cowboys on horseback because some of those low mounted holsters on their hip, when the horse was galloping, could actually cause their pistol to come and fall out. So they did create a makeshift shoulder holster for their guns as they started to get a little bit smaller, for their revolvers to be carried underneath their shoulder, and it kept them a little bit more secure. So shoulder carry has actually been around for going on 200 years in its earliest forms. Now, as we get into the 20th century, shoulder carry becomes even more popular, especially with law enforcement. In fact, the lawman Frank Hammer of Bonnie and Clyde fame famously carried Old Lucky, which is his 4.5-inch Colt single action Army and 45 long Colt. That was his primary weapon. However, he was known to shoulder carry as a backup a 6.5-inch Smith & Wesson triple lock 44. So he actually even used his backup gun to successfully win a gunfight when his family was assaulted in Sweetwater, Texas. So shoulder carry gets more and more popular as time goes on, but what it really starts to take off is in the 60s. And you can see it right here. I have a replica holster from James Bond, the James Bond film Dr. No, and it's really interesting because that is when you really start to see pop culture taking shoulder carry to the next level. So you see it in all the James Bond films. You famously see Steve McQueen in Bullet. He has a shoulder holster, Dirty Harry shoulder holster, and it goes all the way up into the 80s and 90s. And real quick on this holster here, I gotta say a big shout out to Caleb. You may know him as Commando Bond. He lent me this holster. It was made by TH Holsters for him on spec. So if it looks a little tight, it's because Caleb is about 80 pounds less than me. Also, let's just get the obvious out of the way. My shirt, I don't really dress like this normally, and I haven't worn a dress shirt in a while. Yes, things get tighter as you get older sometimes. But it's really interesting because Dr. No, this is obviously the first James Bond film in 1962. He's shoulder carrying with this suede rig. And in fact, he has a Beretta 1934 in the scene where the PPK gets introduced in his shoulder holster. And I have a Beretta 1934 here on loan to me from a big gun website. I can't say the name, it's guns.com. So this is on loan from their used section. Very, very cool piece. So what he does is in the film, he takes the Beretta 1934 and trades it in for what was called a PPK, but was actually a PP used in the film. And I have a PPK right here, also on loan from that same Guns website. Thank you to them. So this stainless PPK right here. So you see shoulder carry very prominently in the James Bond films. Now, as time goes on, the holsters used in real life and in the movies get nicer and more well finished. In fact, if you start looking at movies like Bullet and Dirty Harry that came after Dr. No, they have nice leather shoulder holsters for their revolvers. And then as we get into the 80s and 90s with James Bond, Galco Holsters starts to step in and be the holster supplier for the Dalton era and the Brosnan era for movies like GoldenEye. And I've got to tell you, the Brosnan era was pretty peak Bond. That was like my era of Bond growing up. And so right here I have the Galco Executive, which was the holster used in the Brosnan era movies. Unfortunately, this holster is not being made anymore for some licensing reasons. This is also on loan to me from Commando Bond, so thank you for that. And I was able to practice with this specific rig. The small screen was no different. You saw characters on your favorite TV shows equipped with shoulder holsters. I'd say most famously Sonny Crockett from Miami Vice with a few different guns, but finally settling on the Bren 10, the famous Bren 10. And right here I have the Jackass rig from what was formerly the Jackass Leather Company, I believe, but now is called Galco. This is what's so cool about that specific rig. Don Johnson specifically requested it because it was more comfortable and usable than the shoulder rig that they had started the show with, which goes to prove that Don Johnson is a real-life badass, that he was actually shooting guns on his own time and knew what he was talking about. So this rig that I have here is actually a pre-Galco Jackass rig that was the actual rig offered at the time. Found it on Facebook Marketplace. It's the only reason I still have Facebook. And it is a very cool rig. Now, the only problem, Galco does offer this rig in a modern version. The problem with this is that it is made for a 1911 A1 style thumb safety. Modern thumb safeties don't work with the snap here, so I kind of have to fudge that a little bit. I'll have to get a gun with a slimmer thumb safety to work in this rig, or just pick up the modern version. And it also only works with flat bottom magazines. Modern 1911 magazines with extended bumpers don't fit underneath the magazine snap on this side here. So all of these pop culture references when I was growing up meant that if you were a badass, you carried a gun in a shoulder rig inside of your suit jacket. And in fact, it was so ubiquitous at the time, the idea of putting your hand into your suit jacket, that's where you would keep a gun, that there was even a Disney movie, if you guys remember it, Blank Check from 1994. This kid gets hit with a bicycle, or this kid on a bicycle gets hit by a car, and the guy who's actually a bad guy in the movie puts his hand inside of his suit jacket to pull out his checkbook, and the kid thinks he's going to get offed by this guy. He's a gangster with a gun under there, but he ends up whipping out a checkbook. So it was so common for guns to be carried in shoulder holsters on movies that just the reference of slipping your hand in there meant you were going for a gun. Now, why did this really badass method of carry go out of style? I think it's unfortunate, but it was a few different reasons. Number one, people started dressing differently. The amount of time you see people wearing suits or sport coats now in 2025 is very, very rare. It's considered to be formal attire even to just have a sport coat. Number two is it was deemed unsafe, and I think unfairly so. We'll talk about that. So many ranges actually started banning shoulder carry because of the fact that your gun is not pointed in what's considered a safe direction at all times. But it's not really a consideration for me, because there are plenty of times where even if you're sitting down and let's say you have a gun in a holster at 3 o'clock, there's an angle where you could be sitting that it might not be pointed necessarily in a safe direction. So that one I don't think is correct, but ranges were concerned about it being safe, and so it's been banned almost at every single range and in competition shooting, so it fell out of style for that. And lastly, people just thought that it was not as fast as other methods. And lastly, other carry methods became more popular, specifically appendix, which is the way I carry 99.9% of the time. And yes, that is a very fast method. However, my 2025 campaign slogan is "Make shoulder carry great again," because I think this needs to come back, and it is something that I'm going to be doing more often. The first reason is it's going to encourage me to dress nicer. And I've been wearing coats and sport coats more as I try to dress and look like a grown-up. And when I'm having a shirt tucked in, I find carrying appendix, even with a holster I use, Tenacor's Malice Soul, which has really nice metal clips that are tuckable. You can tuck your shirt in behind it. However, when I have my shirt tucked in, you're still going to see my belt clip, the holster belt clip come up over the belt. And it is a little bit ungainly to get to the gun, and it messes with the tuck of my shirt in the front. So appendix hasn't been great. I have been carrying at 3 o'clock, actually like 3:30 when I have a jacket on. Now, my holster does stick out under the jacket a little bit. Got some nice holsters now. Got a real nice rig from Milt Sparks holsters. I'm going to be talking about that in a future video. Now, I like carrying 3 o'clock. I like having a nice holster, but it isn't really the most concealed, and it does have a little bit of a bulge on the side of my body. So for me, once I put my jacket on with my gun in the Jackass rig, it essentially disappears underneath my jacket, and it's a very, very, very comfortable way to carry, and it's going to encourage me to dress my age. The second reason I think it should make a comeback is it was unfairly deemed unsafe. I do think that it is perfectly safe, especially if you're carrying a gun with a manual thumb safety like a 1911. You should carry a 1911 period, but the manual thumb safety just makes it even more so. I am not concerned about the gun going off in this holster, no matter where it's pointed, especially with the thumb snap that is going to cover The thumb brake is going to be right there in front of the hammer, so the hammer just cannot fall. This gun cannot go off in this holster in any way, shape, or form. So it is a very, very safe way of carrying a pistol. And I think the concerns that people have about it being unsafe when drawing are also unfounded. So admittedly, I do not have a lot of practice shooting with a shoulder holster, but I was out at the range with this jacket and these holsters, and I did do some practice. And I found that while it was a little bit ungainly to try to get the pistol out, and make sure I'm not flagging myself as I turn it around and build my grip. Once I got the hang of it, and Eli, 1776 Duck, as you guys may know him, he was there, and he said one of the best ways to make sure you don't flag yourself with the pistol while you're drawing it is to just grab up behind your head. This is going to expose the gun and the holster. You can grab the gun, bring it out, and then build your grip. It's a very smooth motion, and you don't flag yourself as you're bringing the gun out. So once I started practicing that and got my my understanding of the mechanics and like what to do with my hands as I was drawing, it became very, very safe, and I was not flagging myself as I drew the pistol, whether it was a full-size 1911 in this Jackass rig or a PPK in the Galco Executive. And the last reason I think shoulder carry should come back is because, at least for me, it is just as fast as any other carry method. Whether it's appendix, 3 o'clock, or shoulder carry, I'm not the fastest draw in the world, but I'm anywhere between, like on a quick draw, 1.1 to 1.2 from beep to first shot. Average is like 1.4 to 1.5, and there is no measurable difference for me between appendix carry and shoulder carry. So get a good shoulder holster, get some training, do some practice, and let's get out there and dress a little bit nicer and also carry some badass guns and bring those 80s and 90s vibes back to the shooting industry and to concealed carry.